Board Member Neely,
Present.
we have a quorum.
George, did we say?
Oh, and Board Member Mutu is absent, sorry.
Join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to go in order for the that's on the agenda. So the first item is the enclave on Noyak. And do we have sufficient notice,
We do, Madam
Council?
Chair.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to read that?
Sure. Please take notice that in accordance with local law number 14 of 2022, a public hearing will be held by the Southampton Town Planning Board on Thursday, June 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, and via video conferencing to consider the final application entitled The Enclave on Noyak. The application proposes four lot subdivision of a 5.38 acre property situated in the R40 zoning district, New York State Archaeologically Sensitive Area and Aquifer Protection Overlay District, located at 1566 Noyak Road, North Sea, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-33-1-10.1.
Thank you.
We got an agenda.
No?
That's what I didn't have. I usually.
Good evening. I'm Joe Lombardi from the Rayner Group. We represent 1566 Noyak LLC.
Joe, speak up a little. We can't hear you. That's not an amplifying mic.
Okay.
But you still need the mic for the video,
For the
for the
video.
audio, so.
Okay. All right. We represent 1566 Noyak LLC, who's the project sponsor for this subdivision, which is to subdivide a 5.3 acre parcel into 4 lots for single-family residential use. The subject parcel is located on the southerly side of Noyak Road, approximately 1,073 feet east of Peconic Hills Road. Parcels in the R.
We can hardly hear
You're more in the front.
Okay.
Is there a microphone, an amplification of any kind?
The microphone's only for the audio. There's no mic in this office.
Parcels in the R40 zoning district and the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. Lots range in size from about 53,800 square feet to 60,400 square feet. Previous owner of the property operated a landscaping business on the site. Portion of the site has been cleared for that use. Since the activity on the site has ceased, most of the previously disturbed areas have revegetated with native grasses, shrubs, and trees. The limit of vegetation is shown on the map. The subject parcel is surrounded on all 4 sides by lots which are improved with single-family residences. Since there are no adjacent open space parcels to connect with, the planning board found that a standard subdivision was appropriate for this site. Project sponsor has provided a 25-foot wide vegetated buffer along the perimeter of the proposed lots. The total buffer equals 1.09 acres and is a little over 20% of the site. During the review of the pre-application, the planning board preferred that the previously proposed cul-de-sac that was to provide access to the 4 lots be eliminated in favor of a common driveway, as this would result in less pavement and disturbance to the site. In addition, the roadway would result in adjacent lots becoming corner lots, and that could affect zoning setback issues. Common driveway avoids that. There's an added benefit of the common driveway, and that is there's considerably less pavement and associated drainage structures. The proposed common driveway resulted in the need for a variance because all 4 lots become flag lots, and the flag poles would be 12.5 feet wide instead of the required 20-foot width. The Zoning Board of Appeals granted the relief for the minimum road frontage for all 4 lots by decision dated May 18th, 2023. Subject parcel is located within an archaeological sensitive area, and a Phase 1, 1A and 1B archaeological report was required. The report was prepared by Tracker Archaeology. No historic or prehistoric artifacts or features were encountered. No further archaeological work was recommended. Subdivision was approved by Suffolk County Department of Health Services on March 22nd, 2024. There's a 12-inch water main that runs along Noyak Road. Therefore, the lots will be served by public water. In accordance with the recommendations from the North Sea Fire Department, a fire hydrant will be located at the terminus of the common driveway, and a second hydrant will be located within the right-of-way of Noyak Road across the street from the subject property. That's it. Are there any questions?
Joe, what are the clearing restrictions, Joe? It's an APOD.
It depends on lot size. For these lots, I'm not entirely sure what the number is,
Okay.
but I think it's an acre is
Excuse me?
42,650.
Thank you.
But I believe it's a minimum of 50%.
What are the lot sizes?
The lot sizes range from 53,800 to 60,400,
So they're
Okay, so
large lots.
which are larger than,
Well, a 1 acre in that neighborhood requires
Right.
a 50% clearance.
40, yeah, 50.
That's down the block and around the corner from me.
Mhm. Any other questions? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this application, the Enclave at Noyak? I see no names on the sign-in sheets.
Oh, we have a person in the front row.
Excuse me?
I signed in saying I wanted to speak.
And your name is?
Carrie Hofer.
No, it's not here, but I'll put you down and you can
thank
speak.
I was a minute late.
Carrie,
That's
will
what you
come
get
up
for
to
being
the podium, please,
Thank you for.
and give us, Carrie,
Carrie Hofer, I'm neighbor 49 Woodland Drive. So our property is right, if you could show it. So the building will be right in my backyard. I'm concerned about the sound barrier because,
You have 2 acres.
yes,
Okay.
that's correct. That's one concern. And there is a buffer that has a big hill, and I thought there was some past history there. And I guess you had it researched.
you have to address us and not the
Oh,
applicant.
I'm sorry, I've
so-
never been to a meeting.
Okay, so
this is my
that's
first
the
time.
that's the procedure.
Thank you, please
Speak to
forgive me.
us. It's our hearing.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. All right, the other question I have is where will the water main come from Noyak Road? Through what property?
Okay, we'll have the applicant's representative try to respond to that.
And the
Those are
first
your
question was
questions?
about sound buffer?
The sound buffer, yeah, because right now the trees are providing some protection against Noyak Road, which has become very busy.
Yes,
Yes, and that's a concern.
and then the water main, right?
Yes. And one of my other neighbors had a concern about the effect on the well water in his property. Yeah. And we just want to make sure that our house, we've been there over 40 years, that Noyak Road doesn't get really noisy because the trees are being taken down. And like, I don't know what your name is.
Me, Craig?
I can't see it.
That's because
Yes,
'cause the
Mrs.
snack-
Burke,
the-
Miss Burke, Mrs. Burke
the snacks are
Okay.
hiding my name.
mentioned, we do have 1 acre minimum, and I don't know measurements, so I'm a nurse, so I don't know all this stuff.
Well, 40,000 square foot is a builder's acre, so
So
these
that,
lots will be larger than an acre.
okay, good. So that's great.
Yeah, much larger.
Okay, great. So
And just,
those-
I'll answer the question on the water main. The water main comes up through their flag strip on their property.
Okay, so it comes through Noyak Road.
Yeah, it's already in Noyak Road. Yep.
Okay.
From
We just-
Noyak Road through the flag on their
Onto
property.
their.
Yeah, no, we're excited about, development. It's just that we've been there 40 years and had that privacy, and
Sure.
we haven't had noise. You can hear Noyak Road now because it's It's like one car after another. You can't, it's almost like we need a stoplight to get out, which was
Yeah.
very unusual.
Anthony, what's the allowable clearing per lot?
It'll be based on the size. So we got a 25-foot buffer around the perimeter of this property to begin with, and then there'll be clearing restrictions on top of that.
I don't know the studies on barriers and sound, but you all probably know that. So what do you think?
We like as many trees as possible.
We'd like
I
as many
agree.
trees as possible, but the best sound barrier to prevent sound from going from one property to another is a wall. So we're not going to put up a wall, but we will put up a buffer, which is what we can do.
Okay.
So Joe, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
Well, could you put a little wall up or
No.
something?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
But no,
It's just changes of heart, you know?
the water main is in Noyak Road, and we'll be putting 4 individual water services in a common trench down the common driveway and utility. We'll also be putting in a fire hydrant there too.
Okay, good. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this application? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to close with a 10-day written comment period.
Motion?
Motion by Gloria,
Zoom.
second.
Zoom.
Oh, Zoom.
Is there anyone up there on Zoom?
No one on Zoom.
Thank you. Second by Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, 5 in favor, 2 absent. Council, do we have anything?
No, we don't at this time.
Okay, so it's my understanding the applicants stated that she said that our office never told her that she had a poster ready or anything. I don't get involved in that, so I can't confirm. But the property wasn't posted, so
Right,
we
so
can't
we don't
open up
have-
this hearing,
We
unfortunately.
don't have sufficient posting on number 2, the deep blue sea, so we
Unfortunately-
can't open the hearing.
We're just finding out now the property wasn't posted, so we legally can't.
That means we can't open the hearing?
can't open up the
It
hearing.
has to have a different date.
What is the property wasn't posted? We all learned about it.
Because he was in contact with me, but
No, I mean, it's posted online.
no, it's on the website. The property has to have a poster that says there's a public hearing at town hall on such and such a date at such and such a time.
Explain
The
that,
law requires
Christine.
that we
It's a
cannot
legal
open it without-
requirement within our town code
Unfortunately.
that
Would
must
it
be
be possible to hear our testimony and record it for a later date, so we don't all have to be inconvenienced and come from the city at another time?
We don't have, we don't have an actual hearing open. We don't have jurisdiction to be able to open it, so anything that you were to say, we couldn't use it. So you need to have an open hearing in order to have your testimony in the record.
We could prepare written comments
However,
for later,
as you are
though.
aware, the meetings are also by Zoom.
Send an email.
So
You can also
They could
email
send
written comments. Once the record is open, they'll accept all that.
Can you give me an idea of how long typically from something like this happening, the next one might occur?
What's the schedule like for the next,
We'll do July 11th. You want to do it July 11th? That'll be 5 on that night.
sure,
But doesn't it have to be posted with the
10 days,
with the newspaper as well? Do we have enough time?
would that be?
Might be done July 27th. We could do.
July 27th.
That's something that the applicant will take care of. So the hearing is going to be not for tonight. You'll have a posting that who's the applicant? Are you the applicant? The applicant knows what their obligations are and they will fulfill them, and then you can come back and testify or submit your testimony or appear through Zoom.
So just to
We
be
have to
clear,
move on to the next.
they did not abide by their requirements for their application.
But no one ever sent.
The
us
requirements,
from
correct.
planning board, they never sent us the packets with the application.
So you're letting them.
All right, excuse me, this is, we can't do this.
Mistakes happen.
You need to take this out. Sorry.
Mistakes do happen.
Yeah, I think the record should just reflect that, I'd say
You don't-
80% of the public.
You don't have a record. That's the problem.
It is a record.
It's for your benefit that you have a record in the event that this goes to legal avenue afterwards,
Which it
okay?
may, because the representative is here and obviously knew about it. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
So we're going to
Okay,
post
so we're-
July 27th, so you could do it by Zoom.
25th.
25th. Okay, moving on. We have posting for Loaves and Fishes.
Yes, we have jurisdiction. Thank you. We have mailing and posting.
Craig, want to read it into the record? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Please take notice that in accordance with local law number 14 of 2022, a public hearing will be held by the Southampton Town Planning Board on Thursday, June 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at Town Hall, 116, excuse me, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, and via video conferencing to consider the site plan application entitled Loaves and Fishes. The site plan is to construct two one-story retail office buildings, 3,000 square foot each, and a single-family residence with cross-access to the east on a 1.2-acre parcel situated in the HO zoning district, located at 2252 Montauk Highway, Bridgehampton, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-69-2-17.7.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Carl Benacasa, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, New York, for the applicant. At this point, I think the board's pretty familiar with this project. We've been here on numerous occasions for SECRA, for referrals to the ZBA, for the pre-submission process. The site plan calls for the construction of two one-story retail buildings, 3,000 square foot each, and one single-family residence with a cross-access to the east on a 1.2-acre parcel situated in the HO zoning district in Bridgehampton. A pre-submission conference was held back in February of 2023. Negative declaration adopted in January of this past year. At that point, there was a revised pre-submission report, which you may recall found that the cross-access we're providing was sufficient in size to eliminate the need for that northern row of 7 parking spots closest to the neighbors to the north. We obtained all the variances that we were looking for in a decision from the zoning board dated February 15th, 2024, namely a principal front yard setback of 26 feet from the westerly line, that's Butter Lane, where 30 is required, a front yard setback of 27 feet from Montauk Highway, where 30 is required, a principal front yard setback of 27 feet from the southerly line of Montauk Highway, that's for this building B, where 30 is required, minimum side yard of 12 feet where 15 is required. For the dwelling in the rear of the lot, a front yard setback of 26 feet from the westerly property line, again Butter Lane, where 30 is required. Total lot coverage is 20.67%, where a maximum of 20% is permitted. So slightly over the permitted amount, but we did need a variance. And allowed portions of parking spots to be located within the transitional rear yard at a setback of 31.6, where 50 feet is required. We're talking about these few spots right here. So in all, the application presented, as far as dimensional relief is concerned, is equal to or less than that which was previously approved on a previous site plan by the zoning board and by this board. I don't know if you recall, that site plan called for a restaurant and a private house.
We do.
As you know, we've been working closely with the neighbors, one of whom is represented by Mr. Kennedy here tonight. The neighbor directly to the north, right here, is represented by Bram Weber and his office. I thought they were coming, right? She's not here yet. But we've worked out a resolution where everyone is happy. It's not her. And I'm sure they will, if they can't speak on the record about it, perhaps they'll write a letter or they won't offer any opposition at the very least. That agreement as to terms is articulated in a proposed covenant that the applicant is willing to record against the property. I'm going to enter it into the record, and I'll send it to Claire and council via email for their review. The covenant calls for, among other things, a landscaping and buffer plan with acoustic fencing along the northern property line, dipping down here to cover the border with this adjacent property as well as this adjacent property. That's Mr. Kennedy's client's property.
Is-
It calls for 2 rows of trees. Actually, Sean, did you want to go into the landscape plan? Then?
Yeah, it would be good to get,
So you can see it. Is it in this packet? This is Sean Leonard, our architect for the applicant.
Good evening. In the packet that I just handed out to you, there on the second page is the landscape plan, which will show the 3 structures that we're proposing, along with the landscaping that we would have along Montauk Highway, Butter Lane, and most importantly, the screening plan that we're really putting into effect to screen this property from the properties to the north and slightly over to the east.
Do we have extra windows?
You can have this one.
I'm going to give
I
you
have
this.
two. I got two.
And then I've also followed up with, we've just completed, actually today, some renderings of what the buildings would look like on the corner of Butter Lane and Montauk Highway, as well as along there Butter Lane, to show you they were trying to keep them residentially in a design look as for that and of the residents and the proposed retail buildings. Do you have any questions?
so are these just sort of samples of what it could look like?
Yes,
Shingle, kind of like their main building now.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's, so the main buildings that are part of Loaves and Fishes, which has kind of a Greek revival type of a architecture. So we're continuing that so that when you look at the corner there, everything is all speaking the same language without mimicking it exactly.
Right. And there are 2 3,000 square foot.
Yeah, actually, the one building is slightly smaller. It's like 29. One's 3,000, and the other one I believe was like 2940. So that the combination of the two would stay just under the 6,000 square foot threshold there, and we would divide those up.
Good. Well, we appreciate the client agreeing to move all that parking away from that rear line and buffering it robustly. It makes a big difference.
It does.
Yes.
That was, part of negotiations with the neighbors and to Claire, who was able to quickly establish when no one else had that the cross-access provided allowed us to eliminate those 7 spots. So that was a shout out to Claire on that one.
She deserves it.
This is the attorney for the other neighbor.
Okay, great. So does someone want to speak to this application from?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Brian Kennedy, partner with Forcelli Deegan Tarana. I represent the owner of 54 Leonard Street Corporation, the adjacent property owner. As Mr. Benincasa indicated, we've worked very closely on this application. I've been before you several times on this. He's worked.
It's not an amplifier, you just have to speak.
He just has to project.
This room needs a microphone.
Yes. We have,
Before.
we've crafted those CNRs along with Ms. Scalfani's client. Our agreement not to object to this is contingent on those being recorded, executed by the applicant. Assuming those remain unchanged, we have no objection to this application.
May I ask, you gave an address, but there are 3 houses, it looks like, adjacent to the north. Which one is your?
There's 2 houses.
This one?
Ms. Scalfani's
This one.
client lives north. My client lives directly to the east.
One is up a long driveway, which is this one,
Okay,
and this one is right next to the.
well, you've got this one.
Here, Gloria, look.
41
look up
Butter,
there.
right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah. So it's Brian Kelly, is it?
Kennedy,
Kennedy.
another Irish name.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
And
That's his piece.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Allison Sclafani with Weber Law Group. So we represent Jason Levine and Sarah Hyman with 49 Butter Lane. So just as Mr. Kennedy said, we've been working closely with Carl's office and with their team to craft the CNRs, and again, as Mr. Kennedy said, as long as everything is signed and recorded and a condition of the site plan approval, then we're fine with all of that. And we definitely appreciate all the cooperation in moving this thing forward. Thanks.
Well, we've seen this application any number of times, so I think we know it inside out. Is there anybody on Zoom? Pamela, do you want to speak?
Can't remember whether I also have to give my name and address, or is that just ZBA? But
Yes.
Pamela Harwood, 371 Woodland Drive in Bridgehampton. But I'm here speaking on behalf of the directors of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. And we've written some comments before on this application, but I wanted to focus on the fact, the part about the two buildings of 3,000 square feet each. As you know, in the Hamlet office zone in Bridgehampton, and again, I couldn't hear a word anybody else was saying, so this is not functioning. Okay. You can build 3,000 square feet, but anything above that needs a special exemption. In this case, the applicant is saying, I'm going to build two buildings of 3,000 square feet, ergo, I'm not exceeding the 3,000 square feet. But we disagree with that. It's described previously as being connected by a pergola. And I want to remind the planning board, and we may have done so already, that in a previous application at the property across from the Commons, when an Equinox was going to be built, and it was going to be 27,000 square feet, but the applicant had said, well, I'm going to build one building at 14,000 square feet. I'm allowed to build 15,000. So I'm going to build one for 14, and I'm going to build the other for whatever, I can't remember, but altogether it wouldn't exceed the 30,000 square feet. Therefore, I'm good. But the planning board, and I know, Jackie, you might have been the only one, Gloria, I can't remember who exactly was on the board at that time, said, no, this is connected by a breezeway, therefore it's 27,000 square feet. It's a 27,000 square foot building, and therefore you need a variance. And so I cannot help thinking, and we've been discussing this for a long time, that this application, as it's configured, this site plan, has from the beginning been a way to skirt town code. In other words, the previous application, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but the attorney did, called for, I think, a cafe that was going to have 2 stories, and it was going to provide 4 apartments that were going to be earmarked for seniors. And then that was withdrawn. I think it was deemed, the owners deemed it financially not viable. But then this application came along, and all of a sudden, no more apartments, just 2 office buildings of 3,000 square feet, but again, connected by a pergola, says to me that they're attached somehow, and therefore this is one building of 6,000 square feet, in which case the applicant per code should be required to build 3 apartments. And I think, and we all think, that this is a way of skirting that, and it's very disappointing. And there is a precedent for the planning board saying, no, when you connect something by a breezeway, for instance, when they're connected, somehow we deem it one building. Now, there was another property on Surfside Drive recently that wanted to have 2 buildings connected by a breezeway. Again, it was going to be too large, and the ZBA gave them a variance too. This was very recent. And we're very concerned that this is a new strategy being employed to skirt town code. And in this case, in the Hamlet office zone, avoid having to build the apartments that are required per town code when you go up to 6,000 square feet. And that's what we're most concerned about. There are parking issues, but that's not our main focus. Our main focus is on this, and we'd love it if you would think about that a little bit. There is a precedent with the Equinox application for 2 buildings connected by a breezeway, in this case a pergola, to be deemed one building, in which case they should have to build some apartments. And everyone talks about the need for affordable housing and apartments, but it's not getting done. And I urge you to consider that, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Carl, do you want to respond to that? It's Anthony, it's 6,000 square feet in Hamlet Commercial, HC, right?
Yeah, there's different standards. You could do 3,000, and then you could do up to 6,000. and there are standards to the apartments
Right.
and stuff like that, yeah.
What-
As to the question about, connectivity, that's a question for the chief building inspector.
Right. Was this pergola always represented? Because somehow or another, it's just flashing on my mind, this pergola, that these buildings were connected. I thought they were two separate standalone buildings.
I can assure you that in previous applications, the wording was connected by a pergola. That's not on the agenda tonight. On the agenda tonight just describes it as two buildings. But in previous applications, when it first came around, and indeed, when it was at the ZBA, the wording was connected by a pergola. And the question is this pergola attached in any way to the buildings? And will people go through one building to another? And I just had a thought.
I don't know, maybe the architect can.
Yeah, and the other thing I question is this, and I just thought of it. Here you've got one property, and my understanding of the code is that per lot, you can only have one 3,000 square foot building as of right, and you were allowed to go up to no more than 6,000 square feet with a special exemption. But how is it allowed that on one lot, this application is calling for two buildings to be on the lot? I thought only one building was allowed on a lot, and the maximum was 3,000 square feet without a special exemption. So I don't understand that.
No, the code doesn't read that way. But- Please.
Oh, sure.
The code recognizes the size of the lot and permits numbers of uses based on the square footage. The zoning, the development, the parking, the planning issues have all been vetted by this board, by your planning department, by your building department, by your zoning board. This does not pose any issue with respect to the size of the building. You can have multiple buildings on the same lot. A pergola does not make two buildings one building. So I didn't really want to address it, but that would be the applicant's position. As to what the two attorneys prior to the last speaker said, we are absolutely willing to file that covenant and record it against the property. You can make that a condition of your approval. The terms of the covenant obviously have to be okay with you as well. So I gave a copy for the record, and I'll give it to Christine for your review. Once you do your review, obviously I'll have to reconference with council. But assuming everyone's okay with that, we will absolutely agree to file it as a condition of the site plan approval.
The 6-bedroom residential building in the rear of the property, are there any affordable units in that?
It's a single-family house.
It's a single-family house.
Yeah.
It's not commercial.
It's not commercial.
Well, it was my understanding, Anthony, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you could put in 6,000 square feet. Now, I don't know about this pergola and the connecting business. I don't know if it's connected. Does it connect the
You
buildings?
want to talk about the pergola? Sure. Okay.
Or is it separate and just a shade pathway thing?
But for starters, we're not even at 6,000, we're at 5940, so we're actually under 6,000.
Right, because one building is less than 3.
Correct, with the way it cuts with the angle. The second is, there is a pergola, but it's open to the sky, so it's just a open structure piece that does go between the two buildings.
But is it attached to the buildings?
It would be attached or it could be detached. Doesn't necessarily have to be attached. It's just a structure that was just placed in between the building, or we don't have to have it at all.
Okay.
It's not critical for the. It was just more of an element that was placed.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think there's someone on Zoom.
Is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, I'm going to bring them on.
So, my name is Meredith Berkowitz, and I'm also one of the directors of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I just wanted to add on to some of the things Pamela said. Once again, what you see with this is by separating it into two buildings, they were able to get around the code provision that required the apartments. And I think what's happening is that several lawyers, I'm one myself, have figured out how to put form over substance. And basically looking at the letter and literal letter of the code, and by, sort of piecemealing it out and making it into two buildings, as I said, as Pamela said, there was an attempt to do that with the equal use with the former Equinox Gateway property. And then the Surfside residents actually connected the second two residential homes who the ZBA allowed to connect to each other through a second floor breezeway, where they could never have built a one big house across the two lots. So what's happening is you get this feeling that clever lawyers have figured out ways to circumvent the code, still comply with the letter of the law, but not with the substance and purpose of the law. And so there is concern about that, and I wonder whether that's something that needs to be thought about by the planning board in conjunction with the town board, and whether those loopholes at some point need to be closed, depending on what the real aim and purpose of those zoning provisions are. The second thing I wanted to address is that the single-family residence, I don't know if you've looked at the detailed floor plans that the applicant had originally provided on that, but it looked like a single-family residence, and I know that Mr. Benincasa just said it's not, used for commercial purposes, it's a single-family home, and I know I've heard him say in prior hearings that we don't have the ability, we can't question if the applicant is sort of saying it's a single-family home, that we have to take them at their word that it's a single-family home, and that's really an enforcement issue in the future. But again, it feels like we're setting precedent and allowing smart lawyers to figure out ways to get things done for their clients that really may not be what they seem. This doesn't have a driveway, the single-family home, the only parking for it is part of the commercial parking. That's quite unusual for a single-family home. It's 6 bedrooms. The bedrooms are all equal size. It does not appear to be like a master bedroom, nor do there appear to be like significant living spaces that you wouldn't necessarily see with a single-family home. So it just doesn't look and feel like a single-family home, even though they're telling us that's what it is. And I do understand that we can't question it, but I wonder if there's a way to include in the CNR some kind of covenant about that it has to, making it clear that it can't be used and shouldn't be used as some kind of inorganic practice, which is more what it looks like on the plans than what they're telling us. And then lastly, I could be wrong, but I think that this is in the new historic district. And so I wonder, I know you just got those plans of what the renderings of what the buildings might look like. But if it is in the historic district, and I think it is, I wonder if that has been referred to the landmarks board and whether they've reviewed that, the drawings and the renderings.
It wouldn't be the landmarks board, there's a new structure, but the AR.
Can you?
It wouldn't be the landmarks board, given it's a new structure, but the ARB would be involved, and we're on Tuesday with the ARB. So yes.
I apologize, but I thought that the landmarks board had jurisdiction over all buildings, new or conversions in the historic, that are within the borders of the new nature historic district.
Well, I couldn't hear. I think she was saying landmarks.
She's saying new. She believes that the new landmark.
The Civic Association was part of the sponsors, one of the sponsors of this purchase. My understanding was that it wasn't just for conversion of existing structures or preservation of existing structures, but that the new historic district required new buildings to be consistent with preservation of the history of the look of the town.
If that is required,
If it's
I'm
required,
sure these would pass.
We'll defer to planning if they
Yeah,
require.
I
we'll
mean,
go.
these
Absolutely.
buildings are in that vernacular.
Yes.
From what you've showed us.
But of course,
Like
if this board feels that we should be reviewed by the landmarks board, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure they would comply. Okay, thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom?
No?
Okay, so let's close with a 10-day written comment period. No questions from the board. I'll entertain a motion. Motion by
Second.
Gloria and second by Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? 5 in favor, 2 absent. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Oh, we only have 3 of them, not 4.
Yeah, sure.
We need
Oh, yeah.
Let's adjourn. Second.
Who motioned it? Motion to adjourn by Gloria.
Yes.
Gloria, and second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? 5 in favor, 2 absent. We are adjourned.
Okay.